The galaxy forgot how to feel. In pursuit of peace, civilizations engineered emotion out of their biology. Anger bred violence. Joy bred envy. Love bred chaos. So they cut it all out, surgically, genetically, politically. Empathy became a myth, a cautionary tale whispered to children. But humans never got the message. The Zorvani Dominion captured a human diplomat during a border skirmish. Their leader, Warlord Rithkal, expected resistance, cunning, threats. What he got was a quiet figure with tired eyes who asked, "Why do you hate us so much?" No fear. No pleading. Just a question. The human's voice didn't tremble. They offer no defense, no rhetoric. Only silence, as if waiting for Rithkal to consider the answer. He dismissed it as manipulation. Another tactic. But later, alone in his quarters, the question stayed with him. Humans weren't strong. Their technology wasn't advanced. Their armies were disorganized, chaotic. And yet they'd survived, and worse, inspired loyalty from species that once feared them. Warlord Rithkal initiated a psychological scan. The humans showed no signs of aggression, no mental tampering, no neuroweapons. Just elevated emotional markers, sorrow, empathy, calm. He returned to the cell, studied the human more closely. Their posture was relaxed, even while shackled. "Do you think compassion wins wars?" he asked. "No," the human replied. "But it ends them." It sounded like poetry. A weakness dressed in noble clothing. Rithkal turned to leave, but paused. "You grieve something," the human said. "I can hear it in your voice." He didn't respond. The next day he returned. No guards. No weapons. He asked what grief felt like to humans. The diplomat described it, not clinically, but vividly. A hole in the chest. An ache that changed shape over time but never left. Rithkal listened, lips thin, expression flat. He reviewed past encounters with humans. Records showed enemy commanders defecting mid-battle. Officers laying down arms. Not because of bribes or defeat, but because of conversations. He ordered those files sealed. The next week, the humans spoke of their daughter. Dead in a bombing on a neutral moon. They hadn't seen her in years. She'd wanted to be a teacher. Rithkal asked why they still chose peace. "Because if I make someone else's child suffer, I bring her death back again." Rithkal didn't sleep that cycle. He dreamt, something chemically impossible for his kind. He saw his own hatchling, long since sacrificed for political advantage, reaching for him with open hands. When he awoke, his face was wet. No alarms sounded. No viral contamination alerts. No psychic breach. Just tears. He stopped shouting in meetings. Began requesting opinions. Someone called him weak behind his back. He didn't retaliate. He visited the human again. "What did you do to me?" "I reminded you." His inner council noticed the change. Surveillance intensified. Whispers grew. A plan was set in motion. The human was to be executed, live, across all networks. A demonstration. An inoculation against empathy. Rithkal arrived at the chamber early. Killed the guards. Released the human. They ran, but not far. There was nowhere safe. So he broadcast a message instead. He confessed. Explained everything. Not just his betrayal, but the feelings. The memories. The dreams. He described what it meant to feel again, not as weakness, but as something larger than himself. The galaxy watched. Some in horror. Some in silence. And some, quietly, began to cry. Rithkal surrendered. The human vanished. But his broadcast was copied, dissected, and replayed across 1,000 worlds. The emotionless veneer cracked. An ambassador on Vexor Prime resigned mid-speech, weeping. A labor unit on Galton asked for a name, not a designation. On a frozen mining colony, a soldier turned her weapon into a sculpture and walked away. It began. Not a war. A remembering. Not of violence. Of connection. And in the old quiet corners of the galaxy, Where emotions had been forgotten like extinct species, they returned. First in whispers, then in waves. Rithkal reviewed the containment logs with growing agitation. The human diplomat had not attempted escape, bribery, or manipulation. Each interaction was the same: eye contact, quiet questions, and unbearable patience. It was not interrogation. It was communion. He instructed the guards to cease communication. But days later he returned himself. The human greeted him like a friend. No smugness. No fear. Only attention, unshaken by rank or threat. Rithkal asked about Earth. The human spoke of community, funerals, holding hands at deathbeds. Meaningless rituals, Rithkal thought. Until he caught himself wondering what it would be like to be held. He began dreaming again. Not nightmares, memories. Unprocessed. His mate's smile. The first and only time he sang. He had buried these long ago, alongside every unnecessary attachment. And yet they returned unbidden. The chemical dampeners in his bloodstream weren't working. He increased the dosage. His body fought back. Pulse irregular. Mind wandering. He ran simulations. What would happen if his species unlearned suppression? The model didn't show chaos. It showed evolution. He visited the diplomat again. This time, the human asked, "What would you be without your title?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The silence said everything. Security footage showed his lingering visits. The council summoned him. He lied. He claimed he was assessing the subject's resilience. They believed him, for now. He began hiding files. Releasing low-priority detainees. Allowing music to play in forbidden zones. He started each morning with a moment of stillness. No purpose. Just breath. The guards noticed. His command style shifted. Orders softened. Punishment ceased. Subordinates grew nervous. One filed a formal report. Another tried to assassinate him. The attacker wept as he died. The diplomat said, "You've already defected. You just haven't accepted it yet." The trial began quickly. Betrayal. Emotional contamination. Dereliction. He offered no defense. Only an account, how one conversation splintered a lifetime of doctrine. He detailed the grief he had denied. The guilt. The hope. He named feelings that hadn't been spoken aloud in generations. The court was silent. One juror trembled. They declared him guilty. Stripped his insignia. Denied his name. But the footage leaked. The words spread. Not viral. Viral was fast. This was slower. Deeper. At first, the ripple was subtle. A pause before an order. A hesitation before punishment. Then came the refusals. The resignations. The broken ranks. In the far systems, artists emerged. Not remembered. Invented. Children began asking why their parents didn't laugh. Spouses asked what love felt like. Soldiers laid down weapons to hold each other. On Varnak, the resistance broke into a military archive, not for weapons, but for literature. On Zealer 9, a commander disobeyed orders and instead broadcast ancient human songs on all frequencies. A movement formed, nameless at first. Just voices. Just feelings. Then banners. Then gatherings. And across the stars, one sentence kept echoing. "I see you." The old powers tried to adapt. Too late. They had no emotional infrastructure. No language for reconciliation. All they could offer was control, and the galaxy had tasted something else. The Dominion fractured. Not in blood, but in choice. The human had vanished, never claiming credit. But their presence remained in every conversation, every embrace, every tear that finally fell. Rithkal sat alone in exile, nameless by decree, surrounded by silence not born of suppression, but of peace. He no longer commanded fleets. He painted. Not war banners, but moments. A child's open hand. A broken chain. The curve of a tear. The galaxy he once ruled was unrecognizable. Empires once held together by fear had unraveled without war. Not all at once. Not completely. But irreversibly. Some enclaves clung to the old ways. They called it purity. They declared emotional resurgence a contagion. But even there, cracks formed. A mother comforting a child. A worker humming a tune. The shift had no central figure, no manifesto. It was carried by whispers. By stories. By remembrance. In classrooms where children learned about Earth's philosophers, they didn't study conquest. They studied kindness. Languages adapted. Words returned: love, sorrow, joy. Entire dialects were reborn just to hold feelings that had been forbidden. New rituals emerged. Shared meals. Morning ceremonies. Public laughter. Some resisted. But they were fewer every cycle. Rithkal received no visitors except one. The human returned each solstice. They didn't speak of politics or history. They shared quiet, small details. A new book. A story of reconciliation on a former prison world. A drawing from a child who had never seen war. He asked once, "Do you regret what you did?" The human replied, "Not once. And neither do you." He didn't argue. Across the galaxy, monuments stood. Not to generals or battles, but to moments of change. A Zorvani child placing a hand on a human's shoulder. A commander choosing silence over orders. A refugee singing in her native tongue for the first time. Galactic coalitions restructured. Not by species or sector, but by values. Compassion. Transparency. Shared grief and shared joy. Ambassadors were chosen not for neutrality, but for emotional fluency. Some said the humans had conquered everything. Others said they had broken everything. But the truth lay in either. The humans had not dominated. They had remembered, and refused to forget. No single planet ruled now. Influence shifted with empathy. Cultures rose not on fear, but resonance. Trade was guided by mutual fulfillment, not profit. And still, somewhere on the edge of known space, the former warlord painted. He no longer needed justification. No longer feared irrelevance. He had lived both suppression and surrender, and chose feeling. He once feared what the human awakened in him. Now he feared nothing. Across the stars, the old question was no longer, "Why are humans dangerous?" It had become, "How did we survive before they reminded us how to feel?" The galaxy didn't collapse. It transformed. Where once unity was enforced through sterilized control, now it emerged through mutual recognition. Feelings once forbidden now formed the foundation of treaties. Trust became stronger than surveillance. Vulnerability, more binding than law. Some still resisted. Hardline sectors sealed borders, banning human contact, outlawing emotional expression. They called it containment. But even there, the change seeped in. A medic pausing to comfort a patient. A commander hesitating before an execution. Small fractures widened. Human culture spread, not through conquest, but contagion. Art, music, grief rituals, lullabies, expressions once deemed archaic now redefined power. Empathy became a strategic asset. Kindness, a tactical decision. Fear of humans didn't vanish. It deepened. Not because they posed a threat of violence, but because they revealed truths no weapon could bury. Old regimes tried to replicate the effect artificially. Programs designed to simulate compassion failed. Algorithms couldn't mimic sincerity. Synthetic empathy didn't move hearts. Only the real thing did. New generations emerged, unscarred by emotional suppression. They didn't understand why their ancestors had feared tears. They cried without shame, loved without hesitation, and negotiated without lies. In their minds, peace wasn't an absence of war. It was the presence of feeling. The original human diplomat was never identified again. Rumors claimed they lived among the stars, continuing to listen, continuing to speak only when needed. Others believed they were no longer necessary, because their gift had already taken root. Rithkal's story became curriculum. Not as a traitor, but as a turning point. The warlord who gave up an empire for a single moment of truth. His confession played annually on a universal day of remembrance, not to glorify failure, but to celebrate awakening. Galactic architecture changed. Public spaces were designed for gathering, not surveillance. Technology integrated emotional interfaces, not filters. Governments held public empathy forums. Even language evolved. Pronouns expanded, new tenses formed to capture shared emotional states. A new alliance was born, not bound by species or territory, but by emotional fluency. It wasn't perfect. Disagreements persisted. Misunderstandings occurred. But conflicts were resolved not through domination, but through dialogue. Humanity became mythic. Not divine, not superior, but catalytic. Their danger lay in their refusal to close themselves off. Their power lay in presence. In listening until silence broke. In asking questions no one dared to answer. In staying long enough for healing to begin. And that was the legacy. Not victory, but connection. Not rule, but resonance. Because in a galaxy that forgot how to feel, the most feared species was the one that remembered.